you gonna play some football with us?
Sure, just let me finish reading the paper first.
Okay. Is there anything interesting in the paper?
Well, let's see. It looks like they caught the man who killed the police officer last week.
Cool. Do you think they'll execute him?
Good question. Maybe. The real question is, would that be the right thing to do? What do you guys think?
If he killed the police officer, shouldn't he be killed too?
What do you think?
Well, isn't killing always wrong, even if he did kill somebody?
Not necessarily. Here, sit down for a minute and I'll explain it to you.
Conversations like this happen every day throughout our country. Talking about important issues like the death penalty is not always easy. In fact, there's a lot of confusion today about what the church even teaches about capital punishment. What's a Catholic to believe? Hello, I'm Bishop Dan Janke. All of us have been affected by the prevalence of violent crime in our society. Naturally, we want to see it reduced, and we want those who commit such violent crimes to be punished for them. In the worst cases, many of our fellow citizens, including many Catholics, see the death penalty as an answer to this problem. Pope John Paul II, however, has deepened the Church's understanding of the death penalty by focusing on the dignity of every human person, as well as our modern advances in the penal system that enable governments to protect their citizens from violent offenders. The Church now teaches that the death penalty is justified only if there are no other means by which to protect society from an individual. In fact, the Holy Father believes that the need to use the death penalty in the world today is very rare, if not practically non-existent. Because of the Holy Father's clear teachings, faithful Catholics who until recently supported the use of the death penalty in our country have begun to change their positions. One such Catholic is Charles Rice, a professor of law at the Notre Dame Law School.
I was a cautious supporter of the death penalty. I believed it was necessary and appropriate to stigmatize murder as the crime of crimes. In my opinion, at that time, the penalty for murder should be qualitatively different from the penalty for other crimes. The Church has always taught, and still does, that the state has the authority to impose the death penalty. What John Paul has done has been to change the definition of the circumstances under which that can be exercised. No longer can we support the death penalty for retribution or for deterrence. It can be justified, as the final text of the Catechism says, only where it is absolutely necessary to protect other lives from this criminal. We have about 3,600 inmates on death rows in this country, and we sentence another 300 or so every year. And in order to clear the death rows, we would have to execute one person every day for 60 years.
Juan Mendez is an Argentine attorney and an international human rights advocate who has long opposed the death penalty as a useless means to fight violent crime.
Well, I think the international community is definitely moving towards abolition of the death penalty. Of the highly developed countries of the world, the only one that retains the death penalty and that expands on the death penalty from time to time is the United States. There is no other developed country, to put a name on it, that has decided that the death penalty is the proper way to solve their crime problems. And in fact, in those countries that abolished it in the past 20, 30 years, like the United Kingdom, like France, the crime rate has not gone up. It has been proven that the death penalty as such was not a bar to, was not a weapon in the fight against crime.
The stories of those on death row often reveal lives of parental abuse and neglect. Sister Betty Smoyer, a campus minister at St. Mary's College, has come to know this human side of the issue by having recently formed a friendship with a man on death row.
I think I had the stereotypical understanding of prison. It's the place where we lock them up and throw away the key. I guess who I've met there is someone who, a poor person, a person who's had a lot of suffering and poverty in his life, and there I found the face of God. I don't think I was for the death penalty for a long time, but what could become so much more real for me in getting to know Gamba and befriending him and walking with him is that that part of the system makes no allowance for the mercy and forgiveness of God or for a person's willingness to reconcile. The thing about the death penalty is that it doesn't allow for any of this kind of change to be affirmed and recognized, and that a person could live a good life, even if they were confined to prison for life. He said, if I had known then what I know now about God and spirituality and how to connect with God and other people, how important that is, he said, I might not be where I am today.
While the death penalty is sometimes defended as a way to support the family members of murder victims, often the process from conviction to execution only prolongs the pain and prevents healing. Bill Pelkey knows this from personal experience. His grandmother was brutally murdered. Today, he is the president and co-founder of the Journey of Hope, an organization that is led by family members who are opposed to the death penalty.
Well, when it comes down to the bottom line on the debate about the death penalty, and after all the other arguments for the death penalty have been blown out of the water, they say, well, what about the victim's family? Shouldn't the person get the death penalty for what they've done to the victim's family? And so that's where we as an organization step in, because we say we've had someone in our family has been killed, and the taking of another life is not going to bring the healing that victims' families need. I think at first probably everybody in our organization did have that anger, did have that rage, and would have killed the person themselves if they would have had the opportunity. But if a person continues to have that mindset and they continue to hold on to that anger, and after a period of years it will become like a cancer and it will destroy a person. When Jesus said to forgive 70 times 7, he knew what he was talking about. If you hold on to that anger, it'll destroy you. Paula Cooper, a 15-year-old girl, was the one that had brought the knife into the home, had been the first one to stab my grandmother, and eventually pled guilty to 33 stab wounds of my grandmother. People would tell me, well, you're crazy for forgiving Paula Cooper. And my response was always, forgiving Paula Cooper did more for me than it did for Paula Cooper. So that's the way that forgiveness is. The death penalty says a whole lot more about us than it does about the people who are on death row. Because when a person is killed by the state, they're killed in your name and they're killed in my name. And the cause of death on the death certificate says it's a homicide. So what we're doing is we're being put on the same level as a person that committed these terrible crimes. And we need to, with God's help, rise to a higher level.
As Catholics, we can be proud of how the Church throughout the world stands for the sanctity of human life from conception until natural death. As citizens, we can help build a consensus to abolish the death penalty in our state and in our country. But we need to talk about it with our family, friends, and co-workers. We need to urge our legislators to abolish this cruel and unnecessary practice. Finally, we need to pray for a greater respect for all human life and to commit ourselves to being unconditionally pro-life in a world that really needs our witness.
The important thing to remember is that as Catholics, we need to be unconditionally pro-life. That means we need to respect the dignity of every person, every unborn child, every elderly or sick person, and even the worst murderer. That's why our Holy Father and our bishops are always speaking out against abortion, euthanasia, and the death penalty. It's not a popular stand in our society today, but it's the stand we need to take too.
So the only time you can kill somebody is if there is no other way to protect innocent people from him.
Right.
And in our country, we don't need the death penalty to protect us from murders. We can put them in prison for life.
Exactly.
Dad?
Yes?
Can we play some football now?
Sure, let's go.